Please welcome President of Bank of America Michigan and Chair of the 2023 Mackinac Policy Conference, Matt Elliott.
Nice to have my B of A cheering section here today. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Well, I'd like to add my welcome to the 2023 Mackinac Policy Conference and the potential of the power of and. I also want to thank the Chamber staff and the staff of the Grand Hotel. Ann and I have had a chance to see what it's like to really put on this conference, and it's like launching a missile. It's really complex, and they do an incredible job. So thank you for all that hard work. I also want to thank our sponsors, without whom we couldn't fund all this. It does take a lot to get this video board, for example, onto an island using horses. I also want to thank you all for embracing already the power of and. And I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun with this over the next few days and hopefully even beyond. And that's one of the things that we really want to do with this year's conference is take it beyond just this conversation and expand it out. Last but not least, I'd like to thank our chairman, our current board chairman, Arn Tellem, for his leadership of the Chamber for the past year and also for putting on an incredible outing yesterday. Now, Arn took complete credit for the weather. So we all have Arn to thank for paying the extra premium for the good weather this week. So Arn, thank you very much. So the goal of this conference is to explore the power of and hopefully build a clear framework that will align us towards a winning future for the state of Michigan. And if you take only one thing away from the next few days, remember this: and wins. Because only by using the power of and can you do things that at first blush might not seem possible together. We can do sustainability and we can grow the economy. Our companies can have profits and have purpose. We can be fiscally responsible and make investments in the future. So that is what the power of and is all about. Easy to say, sometimes not as easy to do. So let's start with a quick quick discussion of what we mean by the power of and. Through experience, we know and conversations are those that come from multiple points of view, whereas or conversations look just like these slides. You're left, you're right, you're Democrat, Republican, you're an EV, you're driving an EV, or you're driving an ICE vehicle, and there's no middle ground. It's one or the other. Or, my favorite, you're a Spartan or you're a Wolverine, right? All right, we're going to settle it with a go green. I'm the chairman. And we'll just choose not to root against Michigan. That's our and. We'll call it good. Okay. Well, even though or can be simple or easy, the problem with it is that there's only two options. There's a winner, there's a loser. So the conversation stops. And there's no discussion in between, right? There's no growth, there's no synergy. And there's no win-win. That's how you spot an and conversation, is that you have a conversation between people usually who have different points of view. They have different takes on things. They may have a different context. But together, you land in a spot that's better than where you started. That's an and discussion. So that requires a couple of things. And along the way here, I'm going to give you a few tips that we think will make your experience a little bit better. I'll also talk a little bit more about this alignment reference that I made earlier. And I'll give you a few elements that we have built into the conference structure that I think you'll find helpful as well. Okay, first things first. And if you're really going to have this kind of a conversation that might have a little bit of tension to it, requires us to listen. Listen to understand rather than to be, rather than to get your point across. One of the ways I've thought about this and expressed it is that we want to shift the conversation from being right to getting it right. And that requires us to listen together, okay? Now, let's turn our attention to the state of Michigan, right? We're all here to try to drive a better future for the state of Michigan. Now, we know that Michigan has tremendous challenges. We talk about them a lot on stage at the Mackinac Policy Conference. But I think the more interesting thing is that we have incredible opportunity. It's right in front of us. And we've had some success in recent years taking advantage of our opportunities. But as you're going to hear in the next few days, we can do better. And we all know we can do better, and that's why we're all here. But what holds us back? Well, in my opinion, it's two things. One is culture, and the other is alignment. We have a culture that too often emphasizes or thinking over and thinking. And so what we do is we focus on our piece of the pie, not realizing we'd all be better off if we grew that pie. And as a result of focusing on our piece of the pie, our systems, our organizations, our institutions tend to align themselves towards either or choices. We don't do a good enough job of creating win-wins for those that we serve. So I've got a visual I want to show you that I think does a really good job of explaining this disconnect and how it can be solved. This is not a theoretical discussion. This actually happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, meet the person on the path. Raise your hand if you've seen this before. Yeah, there's a few people who get it. I love that. Okay, this visual comes courtesy of my friends at Sevilla, which is a Detroit-based design consultancy that uses and thinking to drive win-win outcomes. Now, their primary client is usually the people who build that brick path. They're working for the institution. And we all know, for those of us who work in institutions, how hard it is to build a system that we think is going to serve a user. But how often have we ended up, instead of building a brick path, had our client or our user use the dirt path, right? So how does Sevilla do this alignment? It's very simple. They start with the user, and they start with that user's experience. By understanding that experience, their context, where they're coming from, then they help the institution design a better path and create a win for the user and a win for the institution. There are lots of examples of how we can use this sort of thinking to drive our state forward, only if we remember by starting with the power of and the person on the path. And we'll talk a lot more about this as we go along, and we're also going to have a group of incredible speakers that will lift these concepts up as we go through the week. Okay, 4 more things I want to share with you that I think are going to be a little bit unique to this year's conference. The first is data and feedback. In several sessions, we're going to level set with fact. So we start the key conversations from a similar set of facts, a similar starting place. And along the way, you're going to have opportunities to share your voice via Twitter and live polling. The next is what I think of as proximity and context. If you really want to understand someone, to have an and conversation, data is not enough. You have to understand where that person is coming from. And thinking is powered by diverse points of view among people who respect and understand each other. So the tip is along the way, when you're having a conversation with someone new, which happens all the time at Mackinac, get a little bit more about their story. What makes them tick? One of my personal favorites is, where'd you go to high school? By the way, DeWitt High School, class of '85. The third thing that I think is really important is engagement, and this is Mackinac's superpower. This is the opportunity for us to bounce ideas off each other and come up with a better solution than an either or. But here's one ask. As you're having those conversations with people, make sure that we remember the person on the path and speak for the people who aren't in the room with us. Those are the people that ultimately we have to serve and drive a better future for, so speak for the person who's not here with you. And then the last one, and as a banker, this might be my favorite, this is action and measurement. There's a group of B of A'ers here, and they all know that we never leave a meeting or a call that I lead without what? Homework. We never leave a meeting without homework. Neither will any of you. So at the end of every session, we're going to ask for 2 things. Number 1, a micro action, something tangible that we can all do that will start to change the conversation and change the narrative. Too often, we leave here on Friday with a box of fudge, but not much that's all that tangible. We're going to try to change that. The second thing is a metric. How do we know that we're staying on track? And so what we'll do is we will package those metrics and package those micro actions, and that will form the framework, at least the scaffolding of the framework that we'll take home with us. All right? I'm looking forward to seeing how that evolves. Okay, 2 things. Number 1, to drive all this forward, to use the power of and requires us to drive change, and change requires leadership. The more courageous, the better. And I can't think of a better room of courageous leaders to be in than this one. So I want to thank you for your engagement. Thank you for walking the path with us this week. We're going to have a lot of fun. I also want to thank a special person, my wife, Anne, who's sitting here in the front row, and who has walked the path with me. Who has walked the path with me for 30 plus years and hopefully a few more. We'll see how this goes over the weekend. But Annie, she thinks I'm doing okay, you know? But she has been, and Sandy said it right, this has been a team effort the whole way, and it's been a better for it, and I want to thank you for everything you've done for us. Thank you, Andy. Okay, well, it's time to get our conversation going, and I can't think of a better leader to introduce to get that conversation started than the leader of our state. So I'd like to bring to the stage the 49th governor of the state of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer.